Next, on Currents News, a Catholic high school that already survived one battle is gearing up to take on the pandemic, declaring they'll never surrender.
This Catholic high school was once threatened with closing, but it survived. Now it's looking at the pandemic as just another battle to fight and win. I'm Jessica Easthope, and that's ahead.
And another story of perseverance. Will small business in college towns survive?
As Manhattan College students head back to campus, local businesses are looking forward to a much-needed revenue boost while still preparing for another shutdown. I'm Emily Druby, that's ahead.
Pray we must in thanksgiving, dear God, for democracy.
New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan setting the tone on the first night of the Republican National Convention. Plus, Laura is now a hurricane threatening the United States. And the National Guard on the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin, as violence after a police shooting accelerates. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. There's a high school in the Diocese of Brooklyn whose faculty doesn't only consider themselves educators, they call themselves and their students survivors. Nearly a decade ago, Nazareth High School fought to keep their doors open, thinking closing was the worst that could happen. Now a new battle, this pandemic. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the rallying cry from East Flatbush.
Nazareth Regional High School. If its Kingsman mascot is any indication, this school community knows how to fight for what matters.
Perseverance, wellness, and balance. I think throughout the pandemic and continuing into the new year, this is something that we can really reflect on.
Principal John Emilio is new to the job and to the Brooklyn Diocese.
Where the desks should be.
Though he's facing a global health crisis, he's sticking to what he knows best, letting academics and faith lead the way.
Being a Catholic myself, I believe that now I will be able to fully instill my values in the students and learn from them and really cater to their needs.
Who's going to volunteer to tell me what homeostasis is?
When learning moved online in March, the school didn't miss a beat or a class. The first quarter of this school year will also be online.
We truly decided that it would be the best possible way to open the school in terms of safety and security for our students and staff.
Nazareth Regional stands out in the Brooklyn Diocese. The school is 99% minority and has had a 100% graduation rate for the last 4 years.
They understand dedication, devotion, hard work, and we will continue to educate our kids moving forward.
We can keep the flow of traffic in one direction.
Principal Emilio has big shoes to fill, those of his predecessor, now president of the school, Providencia Quiles.
Perfect.
Nazareth has suited up for battle in the past, with Quiles leading the charge. Long before the pandemic was a threat, another danger loomed in the halls.
Nazareth was slated to close.
In 2012, the school was losing more money and students than it could handle and was in a dire financial state. But Quiles managed to do the impossible.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Her students, motivating her fighting spirit the whole way.
I worked 20 hours a day for months to ensure that we got the guidance, the support, the finances. And we pulled everything together.
Now the pandemic is a new obstacle for Nazareth as the first day of school on September 14th fast approaches. But Emilio and Quiles say it's nothing they can't handle together.
We are with God all the time, and we are going to continue moving forward.
If community is the school's suit of armor and academics its sword, faith is its shield. In East Flatbush, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
College campuses across the U.S. are rapidly becoming the new hotbeds of the coronavirus pandemic. About 7,000 recent cases are being linked to universities. Notre Dame is reporting more than 400 infections, and in-person teaching is now suspended. At the University of Alabama, over 500 cases are confirmed in the week after classes started, and several schools are suspending hundreds of students who have violated social distancing rules. College students are often the financial backbone for the neighborhoods where their schools are located. And that's true in the Bronx, the home to Catholic Manhattan College. Currents News' Emily Druby has the story from Riverdale.
Claudia and Richard Baroa have always dreamed of having a restaurant.
It's been so many years dreaming for this place, and finally it's open.
Not part of that dream, a pandemic. The Catholic husband and wife team opened Claudia's Kitchen in June. They leased the space in September and made renovations, then COVID struck.
It was horrifying, scary.
The Peruvian restaurant is about to get a new surge of customers, students. Manhattan College is just around the corner.
All the other business owners that have been here for a long time told me, wait until you'll see a change. You're going to see it pick up. So we're hopeful, very hopeful.
The Catholic school is reopening on August 31st with both in-person and remote classes. Students are already moving into the dorms. Local businesses can't wait for the nearly 4,000 students to return.
The neighborhood was so quiet and the businesses were almost like everybody's closed because we depends on the college, and the same thing with the high school, Philston High School. But now we start noticing a lot of kids coming back and the business is doing much better.
New Riverdale Gourmet Deli is a hot spot for students located right near both a dorm and off-campus housing. Riverdale's restaurants, delis, hair salons, and more are all glad to see the students and their business roll back into the neighborhood. But there is a dark cloud hovering over this hopeful moment.
Excited, but we also know that they're not going to be here full time.
Some students are commuters and won't be living on campus. For those who are there, if the COVID crisis gets worse, everything could change. For so many businesses in Riverdale, losing the students again would be a major hit.
Well, of course, every business around the college is going to be worried. If they're telling you they're not, they're lying.
Richard Baroa at Claudia's Kitchen says not having the students for the past few months has actually prepared them in case they need to do it without them again.
Not having them here, I guess, allowed us to do that beforehand, to cater exclusively to our neighbors.
Manhattan College has strict plans in place to keep everyone safe, including reduced capacity in dorms, staggering move-ins, and COVID testing. Still, if there's anything learned during the pandemic, it's that you never really know. In Riverdale, Emily Druby, Current News.
It's day 2 of the Republican National Convention. Those slated to speak tonight include Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, First Lady Melania Trump, and 2 of President Trump's children. Last night began with a blessing straight from New York City.
Let us pray. And pray we must.
New York Cardinal Timothy Dolan kicking off the RNC in primetime with a prayer.
Pray we must that all lives may be protected and respected in our troubled cities and the police who guard them, in tense world situations where our men and women in uniform keep the peace, for the innocent life of the baby in the womb.
The subject of religion was something the speakers at the GOP convention didn't shy away from.
People of faith are under attack. You're not allowed to go to church. But mass chaos in the streets gets a pass. It's almost like this election is shaping up to be church, work, and school versus rioting, looting, and vandalism.
The Republicans went on the attack, beginning their rebuttal to the Democrats' convention last week. Senator Tim Scott spoke about former Vice President Joe Biden.
Look at what he already did and what he didn't do while he's been in Washington for 47 years.
With President Donald Trump facing sharp criticism for his handling of the coronavirus pandemic, the convention's first night put frontline workers in the spotlight.
Our hearts overflow with appreciation for the incredible frontline workers.
And sought to counter the Democrats' charge that he lacks empathy.
I got to see who President Trump really is. He's a good man and a great listener.
While drawing contrasts of their own between the two candidates, like former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley on foreign policy.
This president has a record of strength and success. The former vice president has a record of weakness and failure.
Preparations are being made at the White House, including the newly renovated Rose Garden, where First Lady Melania Trump will speak tonight, and the South Lawn, where President Trump will give his acceptance speech on Thursday.
I think you're going to see a very hopeful vision for America that he's going to be unleashing. You're going to see a real diversity of the Republican Party that he's built.
President Trump is expected to make an appearance every night of the convention. Stay with us. Frank Cipolla is minutes away. He's a media expert, and we're taking a closer look at these unconventional conventions, the pros and cons. That's still ahead in this newscast. Right now, a major hurricane is taking direct aim at the United States, and when it comes ashore as soon as tomorrow, Hurricane Laura is predicted to be a ferocious Category 3 storm. Texas and Louisiana are at greatest risk. Whitney Wild has the latest.
Hurricane Laura is gaining strength as it barrels through the Gulf Coast. Officials expect Laura to swell to a Category 3 storm by the time it makes landfall, either Wednesday night or Thursday morning.
The storm surge could be worse than Rita. That is a sobering thought.
We're now recommending a mandatory evacuation for all of CALCASIEU Parish.
Portions of the Texas and Louisiana coastline now fall under a hurricane warning, and officials have issued mandatory evacuations for areas including Galveston, Texas. In Houston, evacuation boats and high water resources stand ready to manage Laura's wrath.
So this truck right here behind us can hold about 10 people, and it can go about through 30 inches of water.
The National Hurricane Center expects Laura to drop between 4 and 12 inches of rain beginning Wednesday night and extending through Saturday. Widespread flash and urban flooding remain a major concern.
Be very aware that you need to make sure that you are not near that, because it can easily sweep you away, causing you to lose your life.
Officials are warning Laura's power could prove deadly. As a tropical storm, Laura killed at least 9 people in the Caribbean and may bring storm surges of 7 to 11 feet along the coast. I'm Whitney Wild, Currents News.
Laura has already caused deadly damage in the Caribbean. As a tropical storm, Laura battered the Dominican Republic. At least 3 people were killed and 500,000 residents are without power. In Haiti, the death toll stands at 9, and there's widespread flooding in low-lying communities. Power outages in Puerto Rico have left 100,000 in the dark. Caritas is mobilizing its forces to respond to the destruction. An update tonight on the deadly bombings in the Philippines. The military is blaming the blasts on Muslim militants linked to ISIS. A suicide bombing near a Catholic cathedral and a motorcycle explosion in a central plaza killed at least 14 people, many of them soldiers providing COVID humanitarian relief. The suicide bomber struck near the Cathedral of Our Lady of Mount Carmel, where a terrorist attack last year killed 21 people. There's a lot more news headed your way. Coronavirus and the conventions, they're scaled back and mostly virtual because of the pandemic. A media expert is here to talk about what's working and what's not. Plus, the National Guard in Wisconsin after violent protests following the police shooting of a black man. And a California bishop with some comforting words as wildfires rage in his diocese. Getting back to one of our top stories, the Republican National Convention. Just like the DNC last week, it's a scaled-down version of the traditional event. So are these unconventional conventions cutting it? Here to talk about that is former journalist and media expert Frank Cipolla from Contacts Media. So Frank, after watching the DNC and the first night of the GOP convention, talk about how different they've been compared to traditional conventions.
Well, Christine, they're not conventions. They're essentially infomercials. For the Democrats, an 8-hour infomercial. For the Republicans, probably a little longer. I think what they need to convey is they need to do 2 things. I think the Democrats did it very well last week, and I'm not endorsing any particular party or candidate. But in the Democrats' case, they made it both informative and entertaining. So let's face it, we're in a world in which we need to be entertained a bit, and I think the Democrats did that very well. They touched on the issues of racial equality and of returning to normalcy, and also they had some young entertainers actually entertaining in those 8 hours, as opposed to the Republicans who have thus far has just been speech after speech and sometimes angry speeches. But red meat to both the Democrats and the Republicans, because I think that's what they were looking for.
So aside from the entertainment, what do you think is working and what's not working?
Well, I think what's working for the Democrats, at least, is this message of inclusion. I think that's really important. And I think you saw it last week. You saw younger voices, you saw racially diverse voices, and so on and so forth. I thought it was a little more slickly produced, the Democratic convention thus far, because look, They're writing the playbook as they go along here. They're trying to figure out how to do this. It's never been done before. I think the Republicans so far, again, red meat to the base, but I don't think it's as slickly produced thus far as the Democratic convention was last week.
All right, let's take a quick look at some of the speeches we've seen.
We must elect a president who will bring something different, a president who will bring all of us together.
Ladies and gentlemen, leaders and fighters for freedom and liberty and the American dream, the best is yet to come.
So there was a lot of talk on social media about these two speeches. First, Kamala Harris looking around while talking to an empty room, and then Kimberly Guilfoyle seemingly yelling into the microphone. How do you think viewers responded to this?
Well, part of what we do at Contacts Media is we media coach executives and so on. I think when you have a presentation that is informative, a presentation that is well thought through and delivered expertly, it's more advantageous than a speech in which you have a supporter yelling like that. That conveys to, subliminally at least, to the viewer that the speaker doesn't have control of his or her emotions. And I thought with Senator Harris, you could see that it was well thought through and delivered in a very good fashion, whereas the speech last night, and I suspect we'll have more of those, was a little strident, let's put it that way.
All right, we've heard a lot of attacks on both sides. Let's listen into that.
Donald Trump is the wrong president for our country.
Look to the man who did what the failed Obama-Biden administration never could do and built the greatest economy our country has ever seen.
So do you think it's all attacks and no policy? You know, how are voters supposed to decide?
Well, that's a real good question. We are busy. We're dealing with a pandemic. We don't know whether or not to send our kids to school. We're dealing with education issues. Maybe we've lost our jobs. It's so very important in both of these conventions to keep it down to bumper stickers. I know it seems odd, but you really have to take what is a complex issue and make it very easy to understand. Years ago, and we're old enough to remember this, and a lot of viewers probably are, they would go plank by plank of a platform in a convention and deal with each and every one of them. It's a totally different world. There's too much information out there. And I think when you keep the message short and sweet and concise, you're doing a much better job.
All right, Frank Cipolla, former journalist and media expert with Contacts Media. Thanks for being with us.
A pleasure being here. Thank you, Christine.
National Guard troops are patrolling the streets of Kenosha, Wisconsin after the police-involved shooting of a black man. Early this morning, a building in the city was set on fire. Protesters also stormed Kenosha's public safety headquarters, but were turned back by cops in riot gear. Jacob Blake was shot on Sunday as he walked away from two officers. He's hospitalized in stable condition following surgery. Wisconsin's governor is calling the incident a use of excessive force. The two cops are on administrative leave. Protests condemning the Blake shooting are spreading. At the same time, the Blake family is calling for nonviolence. John Lawrence has the story.
Protests erupt across the country as demonstrators voice their anger about the police shooting of Jacob Blake. Police say they responded to a domestic incident Sunday evening. Shortly afterward, at least one officer fired a weapon into Blake's back.
Right now, we are demanding something, and that is that the cop be arrested and charged.
Blake was shot in front of his children.
We're just shooting them with the kids in the back screaming. That don't make no sense that you treat somebody like that. Who unarmed, not giving you no problem, he ain't throw no punch or nothing.
The Kenosha Professional Police Association says the video of the shooting posted to social media does not capture all the intricacies and asks the public to withhold from passing judgment until all the facts are known.
The commitment that I make to everyone, and make to their family, to the officer and everyone else, is justice will be served, people will be held responsible for their actions, and we will know the truth.
Blake's family is calling for nonviolent protests.
We want justice, and we're going to get justice. We're going to demand justice, but we're going to do that without tearing up our own communities.
I'm John Lawrence reporting.
The National Guard was also deployed to California. They're on the ground there helping to control the raging wildfires. Guard members are on land and in the air working side by side with firefighters and first responders. At this hour, there are more than 600 fires across California, scorching an area larger than the state of Delaware. There is some good news. Today, officials are reporting some containment of the two largest fires. Still, they are warning that this, quote, is going to be a marathon and the fires could burn for weeks. As the flames lick at many doors, the Bishop of San Jose is calling for prayers. One of the fires, the third largest wildfire on record, is destroying parts of Bishop Oscar Cantu's diocese. He's trying to remind Californians that they are not alone and that God's love is, quote, fiercer than any fire.
In your heart.
A Catholic lector is recovering tonight after being punched in the face during Sunday Mass. It was all caught on camera since the Mass at the Cathedral Basilica of Saints Peter and Paul in Philadelphia was being live streamed. After participating in the Mass, the lector is walking off the altar when she's hit twice by another woman. That woman is in custody but hasn't been charged. Archbishop Nelson Perez called it a senseless act of aggression and is assuring the public that there are security plans in place so that this doesn't happen again. Still to come on Currents News, a sneak peek at what school will look like for students in the Brooklyn Diocese. Also ahead, a woman delivering pillows to some hard-working heroes, the exhausting job they're doing. Schools in the Diocese of Brooklyn are going all out to welcome kids back to class in September, and now we have a special peek at what's being accomplished. Monsignor David Casado, the vicar for Catholic schools, shows off what's being done at his parish of St. Athanasius.
I just want to walk you into one of our new classrooms. Right now, the auditorium is being divided into 4 classroom spaces.
Monsignor Casado says there will be about 10 to 12 kids in each classroom space, along with TVs and the internet. To enroll your kids in a Catholic school, go to catholicschoolsbq.org. There's a Find a School button on the top of the website. A group of nuns came to the rescue of a baby that was left at their convent. The Franciscan Sisters of the Family of Mary in Warsaw, Poland, found the newborn in their Window of Life, a box installed at their convent where parents can leave their babies if they can't take care of them. The nuns found baby Zuzia, their name for the newborn, with a note saying she was born on August 24th at 3 a.m. Doctors say the baby is healthy. A jogger in Arizona stepped in for the greater good after coming up on a fire during his morning run.
I don't know what kicked in. Like, I was just wanted to put it out. It's a positive thing, right? If we can all do our part and help each other and yeah, it's for the greater good.
For 2 hours, Trevor tried to snuff out the flames by stomping on them and covering them with rocks. The fire department took over from there. And finally tonight, a woman is giving the gift of a good night's sleep to firefighters battling California's wildfires. Polly Ogden is donating pillows to the brave heroes.
We love them. God bless them. We're nothing without them. And thank God they're here. And they just put out so much. Look how hot it is, how the air is horrible. They're out there fighting these things for us. I mean, the least thing I can do is bring some pillows.
In Calistoga, where Polly lives, the wildfires are now 29% contained. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.